Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. In this case I'm going to be talking about 10 survival tips that will get you killed. I'm not talking about YouTube videos where people show their stuff, their opinions and such, what it is that he or she is doing and wants to share with others. I'm talking about things that you probably see in forums and websites and even on TV, and you think, well, this is advice, this is good advice. It's actually not. It's actually awful advice, very bad advice that will get you hurt or killed even if you follow it. So let's get to it. Some of the things that I think you should keep in mind. First of all, not understanding the difference between rifle and handgun when it comes to survival and self-defense. We all understand that rifles are more powerful, more accurate and such, yet you cannot have them with you at all times, and that's exactly what you should be doing where and when legal to do so. Okay, in countries like USA, where you have the right to keep and bear arms acknowledged by the Second Amendment, you should be taking advantage of it. You should be getting your concealed carry weapon license and using it, carrying your weapon with you. But Fernando, I'm an awful shot with handgun. With a rifle I can hit something. With a handgun I cannot hit the broadside of a barn, so that's why I prefer a rifle. Well, still, in spite of what you may be reading in some places, you will not get an invitation for trouble. You will not get a notice, an email notice, a text message saying, okay, this is going to be happening to you tomorrow. These things happen to you when least expected, when you're leaving the supermarket, when you're parking, when you're coming home after a long day of work, and that's when they hit you, when you're not prepared for it. You will not have the time. In 95% of the cases, let's say, you will not have the time for it. You will not have the time to get your favorite gear, get your favorite rifle. The only thing you can hope for is that you followed this piece of advice and actually had a weapon with you. Okay, people that get killed during these situations usually do so because they didn't have the weapon with them. Hoping for things to be different will not change that, right? Moving on, don't confuse things such as military training, being a soldier, and being an armed civilian. There's a huge difference for that. Don't expect things to work your way and being ready out of the bloom, because it's not going to be going that way. All right, what a soldier does is very specific. It's a specific activity that has a certain time frame. You are doing that in advance. You're not getting caught by surprise, right? You are doing a specific activity, right? As a civilian, as a normal person doing his ordinary stuff, the only thing you can hope for is to be armed with a handgun, because you've been carrying it concealed every single day in preparation for that possible event. Lack of training and not understanding the local laws, right? First of all, lack of training. If you haven't received formal defensive shooting training, if you haven't received that sort of training, then you're not ready for it. Even if you're a great hunter, even if you're a great target shooter, even if you're an Olympic skeet shooter, whatever it is that you do, if you haven't received formal defensive shooting training, you're not ready for it. Thinking that you're going to be rising to the occasion is the same thing as thinking you're going to be driving your wife to the hospital during an emergency when you haven't learned how to drive a car. Okay, you don't know how to drive a car, but you have one in your garage, and you think you're going to be knowing what to do with it when you need it. That's the exact same thing. As ridiculous as it sounds, it is. You're not, as it said in some cases, you're not going to be rising to the occasion. You're going to be falling back to your lowest level of master training, of master skill, right? That's important, because in the good days, this didn't make much of a difference. You carried your weapon, but since you weren't going to be using it, it didn't matter. Okay, it's a false sense of security, because the situation is not putting you to the test. The situation is not bad enough where you can separate the false sense of security from the real knowledge and the real proficiency. As times get worse, and they are, not only here but in global terms, all around the world, crime is getting worse. So expect it to get worse in your location as well. Not understanding laws. This may not get you killed, but may land you in jail for a very long period of time. A person that I know, that he was a hunter, he was a boar hunter, he had a home invasion. Doing what he did as a hunter, he waited for them, and when they were leaving the house, he shot both of them in the back. Right? Shooting people in the back when they're not representing a realistic life threat to you will land you in jail here in Argentina. Check your local laws, because maybe in the place where you're living right now, shooting someone when it's not a clear self-defense situation may land you in jail as well. So ignoring those laws will cause lots of trouble for you. Some people say, I've heard people say, okay, I shoot them in the sidewalk and I drag them back inside, because since they're inside my house, I have the right to shoot them. I mean, think about that for a second. The blood trail is gonna be leaving, all the evidence, it's gonna be everywhere, all the evidence needed to put you in jail and showing exactly what you did and what you tried to hide. Awful advice, people. Some of the advice you hear and you see in some places is just outrageously ridiculous. Moving on, the knife versus gun thing. The don't bring a knife to a gunfight. How many times have you heard that? Even by people that consider themselves experts. Don't bring a knife to a gunfight. What is that about? I mean, a knife being used against you at less than 7 yards has proven itself time and again to be extremely dangerous for you. Okay, less than 7 yards, which by the way is usually the range at which self-defense situations and self-defense fights occur. At contact range, or 7 yards. 7 yards is considered the average. Usually it's lower than that. And within those 7 yards, someone with a knife is just as dangerous or more dangerous as someone with a firearm, with a handgun, with a rifle, whatever it is, because of the distance and because of the way in which the knife inflicts damage, the speed at which you can get stabbed and slashed with one. And if you have no especially if you have no training so as to know exactly what you're supposed to do when that happens, the guy with a knife is going to be winning, and my bets are going to be going to the guy with a knife. Right? Just a bit of will and determination to hurt you. He's armed with a knife, you're armed with a handgun, and maybe you don't have enough training. You're gonna be going down. This guy with a knife is gonna be taking you down for good. Right? Never underestimate. Never think that, oh, I have a gun and he has a knife. That's stupid, and it's something that, as things get worse, as these things that didn't used to happen start happening more often, you're gonna be seeing more of this, and you're gonna be understanding what I mean by it. Okay? Never think that because you have a gun, the guy with a knife is not a threat. That stuff will get you killed, no doubt. 4. This is something that I read. Throwing stuff at bad guys. Okay? Again, some expert thinks that simply reacting violently and aggressively towards a bad guy, even if he's armed, simply just throwing stuff at him, throwing. I think the actual text said throwing. If you're in a restaurant and some armed burglars come in, armed bad guys come in, you throw with salt and pepper at them, and that's going to be sending them away. I mean, awful advice. I don't know where that's coming from. Throwing stuff at someone, again, we go back to reacting with no skill, with no training, with no understanding of what you're supposed to do, just going hysterical like, you know, a crybaby going hysterical and throwing stuff at someone that's keeping you at gunpoint, that's one of the best ways to get shot yourself. Okay? An armed robbery is already a dangerous, delicate situation, and you going ballistic and you going hysterical and throwing stuff like a hysterical little girl is gonna be getting you shot. I mean, where are people coming up with all this stuff? No, by all means, do react with knowledge, do react with skill, having received some form of training, hopefully having a weapon with you of some sort. I know a guy that killed one of his attackers and was armed with a gun, with a knife, alright? But he did it because first he had the knife with him, and most of all he had the skill to do what he knew he could be doing. He knew what to do in that moment. He didn't go hysterical throwing stuff at an armed attacker. Alright, awful advice again, just don't fall for that. I don't know where people come up with that stuff, but I've seen it, I've read it. Not good. Another one, the empty house myth. I have no idea where people came up with this, where some experts or self-claimed experts came up with this, thinking that a house that is supposedly empty is not going to be targeted by looters, by people desperate that don't have anywhere else to go, thinking that pretending that your house is abandoned is good for you in any way. I'm going to start drawing again. Imagine for a second we have the horizon here, we have a house here, we have a road, we have a natural or man-made disaster or shit hit the fan event, whatever it is you want to think of, and you have thousands of people and vehicles and cars and people walking through this road, leaving the city. Here's the city that went up in flames for whatever reason. Whatever it is that happened, people are leaving it and they're going through this road and they see a house over there. And you follow some of this horrible advice. You actually followed it and you left your grass to be overgrown. You left your yard unattended and stuff lying as if the house is abandoned. What on earth do you think is going to be happening? Please, I mean, I'm not even asking to look for historic moments when you could relate to something like this. I'm not even asking that. I'm asking for people to use their heads for a second, please. What is it that you think is going to be happening when you have all these refugees and people leaving this city and they see an empty house? They're going to be going to it, all right? And what else would make sense? You see a house that it looks empty, especially if it looks abandoned. God, if it looks abandoned, I mean, what percentage of these desperate folks over here are gonna be thinking of taking advantage of the place that looks completely abandoned? All right. If you did a good job in following this horrible advice, you're going to be having a lot of people thinking, okay, this is a place that maybe I will find food, I will find shelter, I'll take advantage of this location. I would, if I don't have anywhere to go and I see an abandoned structure, I'm going to be seeing if I can take shelter there, right? Light control, I mean, light control, that's something, or light is something. I didn't even make the mental effort to remember the way they were describing it. The thing was, this expert was talking about putting shutters or blinds in the windows so that you didn't see any light coming out of it, so that it looked like no one was inside, right? Again, same thing, a place that looks empty. No, I mean, no, by any means. You want this to be like a freaking Christmas tree because you want people to know that you're inside. And if you can make it absolutely clear even from the outside, because you have a gate, you have a well-kept perimeter, you have the grass well-kept, cut in a military fashion, and you have these spotlights showing that you're in there and that chances are you're probably armed as well. That's what you want. You don't want anyone coming and messing with you. You don't want anyone coming and seeing, okay, maybe this place is empty. Bad guys will go for the empty house. They don't want to get shot. If they see this house and they see this other fool on the other side that has a did this light this window shutters and follow that sort of advice, and it looks empty, guess which house criminals are gonna be hitting first? The one that has the lights and probably people with guns inside, or the house that looks empty? They're gonna be going for the house that looks empty. That's what makes sense. That's what actually happens. All right, enough of that, please. People, think. 6. Distance equaling safety. I had there's a thread at themodernsurvivalist.com, themodernsurvivalist.com forum, where there's this thread with my friend Nomad. He was telling me about his choice of a place out in the sticks where they play the banjo and stuff. Life is too short to live anywhere that you don't like. All right, if you like living in the city, go for the city. If you like the suburbs, go for the suburbs. If you like living where they play the banjo, go for the banjo stuff or whatever. Now, I have my opinion, and I have my opinion based on the research I've did and my experience, that usually something in between, like the suburbs, or at least having neighbors. What I go by is within screaming distance. Okay, in a desperate moment, screaming and someone please hearing you. That's what I go for. That's my aim. That's why I prefer a small town maybe as ideal, right? But again, thinking that distance alone equals security is a huge mistake, and this is something that could get you killed because you become complacent, because you're not keeping the awareness level you should, because you're thinking that distance alone is going to be safety. And I find lots of people thinking that way, and I know it's not that way. I know it doesn't work that way, because if you got there, so can others. If you got there walking, or especially if you got there with a vehicle, if you got there with a car, so can anyone else. So people think, okay, I'm away from the city, I'm on my own, I'm far away from everyone, so I'm safe. No, you're just on your own, you're not safe. Don't confuse distance with safety or security. Bugging out. All right, favorite one. You know, bugging out. Yeah, you have to leave the city. You get into your 4x4. We talked about vehicles, guys, by the way, at the modernsurvivalist.com forum, about which is realistically a good vehicle to get around during hard times, during a financial crisis, but also bugging out as well. You want something that covers distance. Now, what happens is that people, okay, think, I'm bugging out. But guys, where are you going? Do you actually have a place? Yeah, I have my bug out location, which is this awesome place full of great stuff. Okay, and you're leaving this place on your own. In South America, in any South American country, you couldn't get that away with that for a week. All right, I'm not talking about Argentina. I'm talking about South America, Africa, poor countries. You cannot get away with leaving a fully stocked empty place. In a matter of days, someone's going to be inside or stealing your stuff. Now, maybe you're in a first world country and your situation is different. Great, first world, that's awesome. Now, you're talking about bugging out, so that means that there's trouble, that there's problems, that there's people looking for places to go, people looking for shelter, desperate people, bad people, even good people that are desperate are going to be doing stuff like this, like taking advantage of a fully stocked bug out location. So my advice is, instead of doing that, if you do this, have someone living in it. Oh, but Fernando, I cannot afford to have someone taking care of my bug out location. Well, then don't be stupid and don't think that this place is going to be at your disposal when you're leaving it empty half the year. Especially not during troubled times, right? Use your head. Maybe instead have a place where you can go to, a family member, a good friend, have a conversation. Look, if something happens, can I come to your place? Yes or no? Okay. Is it okay if I leave this stuff with you? These supplies and this gear, can I leave this with you? Maybe a weapon, maybe some food, some extra cash, some stuff. Can I leave this with you just in case I need it? And that's a plan. That's a plan, and that's not just bugging out with no place to go to. Bugging out and thinking of going with a freaking tent to a national park, that's maybe the most stupid thing I've ever heard in my life. I mean, what are people thinking of? I don't know. Gonna be making this campfire, and everyone's gonna be singing kumbaya, sitting around here and hunting deer. It's gonna be all plentiful, and you know, there's gonna be a stream here, and fish are gonna be jumping out of the stream, you know, straight into the fire, so that you don't even have to bother cooking it or anything. No, people, no, it's not a plan. Thinking of bugging out in a tent in a national park, it's not a plan. It's pretty much one of the worst things you can go. You need a fixed location where you actually know that you will have shelter, that you will have supplies. How many people are going to be going to these places? How long before these places become a settlement or a freaking FEMA camp and someone shows up and gates up the place? I mean, how many people are going to be doing this exact same thing? And which kind of people are going to be doing this? The ones that were stupid enough to not have a place to go to. That's the kind of people that's going to be going there. So you're going to be surrounded by thousands of unprepared, rather limited in terms of intelligence folks. That's going to be the people surrounding you. Awful situation to be in. Please have a plan. Have a plan and know where you're going. 8. Moving on. Running out of space, we're gonna be doing 8 here. 8. Money. Okay, buying all the stuff, making all the gear, the supplies, the stuff, and completely forgetting about finances, about what you're gonna be doing in the future when you're old. Maybe if you get hurt, maybe if you're crippled, if you suffer some disability and you're not able to work anymore. Financial preparedness is huge, and there's actually been experts that prepared themselves into bankruptcy and ended up in a very poor situation. Killed, you may end up, you may be ending up in an awful situation if you cannot afford your medical bills, whatever it is. Financial preparedness is very important. Keep going on. These last 2, 9 and 10, are mostly regarding TV. Okay, first of all, going barefoot in the nature or going barefoot as a survival strategy of whatever, I don't even want to get there. I mean, if you're going barefoot because you have this special connection with Mother Earth, Mother Earth probably has Wi-Fi as well. Okay, you can go wireless if you want. Okay, wireless. You don't need to go barefoot to have a special connection with Mother Earth. Okay, I mean, if you have that need, touch the floor with your hand and caress it and say, "I love you, Mother Earth." It's all good, but don't go barefoot in nature in the city. You're placing yourself in the worst possible situation from a survival point of view. This is textbook stuff, guys. This is basic textbook survival stuff. The first thing, if a plane crashes and you find yourself in the middle of a jungle and you don't have footwear, the first thing you have to do is make yourself some footwear. Why would a sane person go barefoot in the first place on purpose? Awful advice. Natural disasters, man-made disasters, terrorist attack, think debris, think glasses, think pieces of metal, of rock, stones, all this stuff, and you're running for your life and you're barefoot because you want your connection with Mother Earth. Don't do that. Finally, this is the guy from Man vs. Wild, I think, that he goes running everywhere. Okay, running into the jungle and into the forest and running across volcanoes that erupted, and there's lava all over here, and the guy just runs and jumps through these streams of lava, and he jumps and lands in something that he magically knew was not melted rock that would actually kill him in the most painful, imaginable, possible way a person can die. You don't run in places that you don't know. You don't run through a jungle because it's the best way of breaking your foot and killing yourself, guys. Awful advice. Folks, that's going to be it for now. Take care and have a good day.